So here we are. It is the week of, it's the best week of the year, the week of Christmas. Merry Christmas to all. Happy holidays, whatever holiday you may celebrate, but certainly it is that time of year to be joyous and to be grateful. And so we will do what we do best, which is to nitpick a win, I guess. No, I'm just kidding. Good afternoon to you. My name is Jake Quarry. Jimmy Cook here as well. Eddie Garrison, who just put together that audio that included Matt Taylor from the Colts Radio Network and the Colts win yesterday over the Tennessee Titans at Lucas Oil Stadium. And now still in position to be in position, which is what at the beginning of the year you would have said you wanted. And yesterday they did the things that they needed to do, and they have a wonderful opportunity here because of the fact that they finish against teams that I thought Andy Sweeney said it best yesterday, where he said, look, you're going against guys that are already in Cabo. There's a lot of truth to that. If you were going to take the positive is that clearly the Colts on the ground have a very difficult for other teams to contend with 1-2 combo of Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson. And Jonathan Taylor, who had the mishap of all mishaps that might have cost the Colts the season. Hard to say that in, when you look at the totality of a year, but in a vacuum, the drop against Denver was so big. But to come back from that for Jonathan Taylor, and probably by design all the way around, to feature him to the tune of 29 carries, 218 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 of them over like 65 yards, which I think I read was the first time maybe even in Indianapolis Colts history that's taken place for a back. But either way, and then you have Anthony Richardson on the other side of it as well, doing what he does, 9 carries for 70 yards. Reality is this. This year from the beginning was all about the development of Anthony Richardson. I said it. I still believe it. I think the Colts believed it. But then you get greedy because as the year goes on, you go, well, wait a minute. Like, there is a chance to get in the playoffs here. There is. And what the Colts did that was dangerous for them, and I know I keep going back to this, in the Andrew Luck era, different player I realize, but Andrew Luck as a rookie, they had immediate success, and that they moved the goalpost after that. They took Andrew Luck and said, look, we're ready to compete right now. And they went out and they got Andre Johnson, and they went out and they got Frank Gore, and they got Gosder Sherrillis, and they pushed all in right then. And I think they made a pact to themselves, to Jim Irsay, they were not going to do that again with Anthony Richardson. They were going to let it organically grow. But now here they are, and late in the year, because they have a chance still at the playoffs, and they're trying to win games, there is a danger perhaps in this fact, and that is that in order to facilitate the playoff push, they are doing what they need to do to win games, but what they're doing to win games and what they are needing to do to win games actually is perhaps limiting the play of Anthony Richardson and the development of Anthony Richardson, because he threw 11 passes. And they still do not have an established air attack. And as soon as, 2 years, I talk about timeline all the time, right? So in 2 or 3 years, when Jonathan Taylor is no longer the level that we're seeing right now, and you don't have that, Jonathan Taylor is an elite running back. He is a back in the NFL. I mean, he's one of the top 3 to 5 running backs in the National Football League. And guys like Jonathan Taylor, there aren't a lot of them. So he's hard to replicate. I think we've seen that when he's been out, right? So in 2 or 3 years, if Jonathan Taylor is starting to show decline, and now you don't have that dynamic, the 1-2 back to go with, and you've got to rely on Anthony Richardson as the quarterback to carry you, what were you doing in years 1 and 2 to facilitate for that for Anthony Richardson in that moment without the running attack? That is indeed for a later conversation perhaps, but you have to be aware of it because it was a great win. I'm not trying to put coal in the stocking. I'm just saying the reality is, Jimmy, it did come in the form of still having training wheels on the quarterback that you're trying to get to ride his own bike.
What they did yesterday offensively, while dominant, while impressive, while a reminder and a return to the national stage for Jonathan Taylor of, I've learned from that mistake last week that might have cost the team the season. Here is, one of my best performances individually as a Colt. Let's go. While that was great, and I am happy for that sake that he was able to have a bounce-back game, we've seen that before. We know that that is something the Colts are capable of as an offense. And it's almost regrettably to a fault for them, because at this stage of the season, even though, yes, in theory, if 3 or 4 things break your way, playoffs are still on the table, I want to see more of Anthony Richardson being the focal point, and not just with his legs. That's still impressive. We know that's there. I mean with his arm. It's kind of like if you were a youngster that's learning the game of basketball and you finally are strong enough to shoot threes, and your coach is going to tell you, hey, let's work on some layups. Let's work on some free throws. Like, no, I just want to shoot threes. I know how to do that now. I like that. Let's just shoot 3-pointers. Well, what about the rest of your game? And that was kind of my takeaway at times yesterday. Like, yeah, I know Jonathan Taylor's great. I know he can run over anybody at will. This Titans defense, like a wet paper bag out there. Like, he's getting everything he wants. Let's expand the offense a bit. And I know they're not fully at the luxury to do that because they put themselves in this situation where the playoffs are still not just a pipe dream, but they're still possible. But it's a weird rock and a hard place, Jake, because I want to see more from
a wet paper bag
Richardson.
is harder to tear than a paper bag, isn't it? I know that's
it depends how you're jumping at it or how you're punching it.
If you just had to take one with 2 hands and rip it, like the paper bag would rip more easily than the wet, right? Doesn't the wet kind of like coagulate with each other?
What if you're punching down into it, though? Wouldn't it then rip away more if it was wet? Whereas if it's solid, it might resist a little bit?
I think that's probably true. I think the wet paper bag, if you're punching through it, it would have more give,
right?
For sure, right? The phrase is
that's
exactly
where I would assume
correct.
The phrase comes from, though, is that it has a little bit more give.
Eddie, can you look up the origin of the phrase wet paper bag, please?
Also, the other thing we learned yesterday, and we've learned it all season.
Eddie's going to have to use his Google Safe filter depending on exactly how he's looking that up. That's right.
The other thing we've learned about this team, and I'm going to remove the Jacksonville game, A, to help my argument, but B, they just don't win in Jacksonville. We've learned that. Just not going to happen anymore. They play well against bad teams. They don't do that great against good teams. And that, to your point, is the crossroads
they should be in the college football playoffs.
Right, for sure. But that is the crossroads they're going to come to, Jake, this offseason, where you've been warning all season, don't repeat the Andrew Luck mistake.
I'm telling you right now, Alabama wouldn't have let Tennessee back in that game. It wouldn't have been 38-30. Alabama stepped on it, put that game away. You see, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Roll damn tide.
No, it's high tide.
It is high tide, right? That's the thing you've been preaching and warning about all season is what if this happens with what happened with Andrew Luck where they go too quick too soon and they get all chips in too fast like they did during the Luck era. I don't think they need to take that approach because they can be fully aware of the fact that they are probably among the best of the vat of suck that you always talk about.
Right.
Like they're a really good team of those that are bad. Outside of that Dolphins win, when you're up against fringe playoff teams, they've largely underwhelmed. And that's going to be your ultimate barometer this offseason when you're figuring out
the Colts
how to
are
upgrade
South
the
Carolina,
roster.
Right?
Yeah.
They're the team that's right on the outside. Yep. We have a lot to talk about over the course of today. We will get into plenty about the Colts. Matter of fact, Kenny Moore going to join us coming up just under 20 minutes from now. Had 2 picks yesterday. He has 3 on the year. And, a lot of questions, I think, about that defense just in terms of kind of letting Mason Rudolph get them back in it. I mean, you go into a prevent, that changes a little bit. But I'm just curious the overall mindset of where the Colts are right now. Because when I asked the question yesterday for fans, as I do after every game, give me in 3 words or less your thoughts on the Colts through 13 games, 14 games, 15 games, and people are ready for Christmas. I mean the overwhelming response from people are like, it's kind of like, okay, let's get this over with and move along. Certainly, I don't think the players have that standpoint.
You said it was 3 words, right?
Yes.
Was shiny new GM in there on the Christmas list? Or
there
no,
was
did that not,
plenty
did that not
of
make it
discussion in the replies. If I were to read you right now, and I will. So after every game of the season, I have done this all season long. I have asked the question, tell me in 3 words your thoughts on the Colts season through, and then, yesterday, 15 games. Now, usually I get 400 to 600 responses. Yesterday, about a quarter of that. And I get it. I mean, it is a unique – yesterday was a unique game because it is – like, for example, and Regent Bryan is going to probably want me fired for this. While the game was going on, I was at Yuletide because it's my parents' 60th wedding anniversary, and there were 11 of us. My dad got a row of 11 for my sisters, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, my nieces, my nephew, Shannon, myself. It is the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra,
what
correct.
some of my family went to that
the
yesterday.
Yuletide yesterday, too.
Yeah.
And
shout out to the cooks.
And people get upset with me because how in the world could I possibly do it when there's a Colts game going on? Because my parents are in their mid-80s, and it's my dad's all year long. He looks forward
how
more
dare
than
you.
anything else, right?
Yeah.
And there's a weird thing called DVR and Twitter, and you can go back and look at games, right?
Yeah.
But I still asked the question yesterday, and here are some of the responses. Seen this before. Average at best. Delaying the inevitable. What the blank. Rinse and repeat. Learn nothing new. Fire Chris Ballard. I've lost interest. Change still needed. Get it over. Not playoff bound. Disappointing little optimism. Fire them all. Clean the house. Not very good. Less than mediocre. Irrelevant. Too early. Another underwhelming season. Now, it seems contradictory for me to sit here and talk about this on a radio show when I'm wanting people to listen to it to talk about the Colts, right? But it is interesting that it is still within reach for them to make a big step. And part of the development of Anthony Richardson, we talk about, it would be good for him to see playoff atmosphere, to go, even if it's a game where they go in and you know that they're going to be Tennessee against Ohio State, then it still would be beneficial, right? But if you are players on the roster, you're like, no, we need to get in the playoffs for a number of reasons beyond just that, right? But I'm interested to talk to Kenny more about that. We'll do so in about 15 minutes. Pacers last night getting their 4th straight win on the road. They were dominant in Sacramento. They got the Boo Birds out in Sacramento. They're in Golden State tonight. And Jimmy, don't look now, but all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, this might be perfect timing. Right as the NFL season starts to wind down, the Pacers are starting to hit their groove a little bit. Some of that may be that they're healthy again, or healthier. I mean, you don't have Aaron Nesmith, but they're starting to play at pace. And I think part of it, again, I don't know if Halliburton is just healthier or the fact that he has decided and figured out he doesn't need to be the guy that's launching threes all the time, but rather just his pace and the threat of that is opening things up, and he is again finding people and creating transition. But Siakam's playing well. McConnell continues to do McConnell things. And then you just get role players that are all playing well at the same time. Obi Toppin, even Johnny Furphy's giving them some quality minutes. Ben Shepherd coming back is big. But it looks like, Jimmy, I'm not going to say that we hit the panic button on Indiana too early, but with the Pacers, when people are like, what in the world is going on with them? Now that they are getting back to some semblance of health, it does look like they still have within them some of the cohesiveness they played with a year ago.
No, I don't think that anybody necessarily hit the panic button too early when you look at what they had inspired or lack thereof just at the start of the month. They had lost 4 straight. Halliburton looked lost. They were depleted on the injury front. And your questions were, when would the reinforcement arrive, and how would this lineup and this roster change? And they get Nembhard back. They are able to reacclimate him to the lineup. They go out and get Thomas Bryant via trade. And while that's not a season changing or altering move in terms of the type of player Thomas Bryant is, it has allowed them to reallocate minutes and get guys like Jarris Walker back into the position that he was supposed to be to start the season, which is more of a small forward look than being a bigger body, what they demanded him to be when they were so shorthanded in their front court. And the other thing is, as you mentioned, with football season winding down and attention turning back to the Pacers, to have your best winning streak of the season out of the gate here in this, middle of December, win 4 in a row, now winners of 5 of 6. Of those wins, that 5 of 6 streak, 4 of them have come on the road, which is something they were terrible about to start the year. And Tony East and Pat Boylan both pointed this out in the last week. they're right around the same spot record-wise they were a year ago. So I don't think that it's necessarily a full-on, yes, they're back and you don't have to worry about anything the rest of the season. But comparatively, looking at last year, where they stand right now, and also, Jake, to your point about Halliburton, not only is I think him seeing the floor better and managing better whatever it is he's dealing with, his three-point percentage is at its best point of the season in the month of December. He's right under 40%. There were times this year where he was below 30, which for his career would have been the worst he's ever put together. So to have him bounce back and all these pieces kind of get put together, and then you compare to where they were a year ago, and as you outlined, they're still going to get Nembhard back, or they're still going to get Nesmith back. Like, this feels like it could have been maybe a little early.
Don't Nesmith and Nembhard kind of feel like Gastineau and Klecko, or like Mahomes and Kelsey, or Brady and Gronkowski? Like, they are attached in your mind together, are they not?
Yes. I have a very hard time
They're not the
separating
same
them.
player.
Correct.
But first two letters, but they kind of bring the same X factor, right?
Admittedly, hand up in the air, take the blame here. I always just associate the two of them together. Yes, to a T, for
they
sure.
have the same initials.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
They have the same first two letters of their last name, and they bring the same, like, oh, wow, the other team probably didn't necessarily have them on the scouting report, but look what they're doing, right? Yeah. By the way, I would like to say hello and a Merry Christmas to all that are listening and or watching including in the YouTube break room. Caffeinated Jimmy and Angie are watching in Florida. Jimmy, they're from Indiana, right? They live in Florida now. I have a question about this, Jimmy.
To me or to Caffeinated Jimmy?
To you, Jimmy.
Okay.
About Caffeinated Jimmy and Angie watching in Florida, or anybody watching in Florida. Would it be I don't like the winter. I don't like cold weather. I don't like the lack of sunshine. I don't like any of it. But I love it this week. It would be so weird for me. I'm not saying that you wouldn't get used to it, but it would be so weird for me to have Christmas season in shorts and a t-shirt. It just would feel different. We're going to, Christmas lights tomorrow night, okay? Tradition on New Year's Eve. The photo wearing the stocking hat and a scarf and gloves and being bundled up and being cold is part of the whole deal, right? Walking in to the house on Christmas Day and be like, ooh, somebody helping grandma, it's cold outside and the sidewalk's slick. Isn't that all part of the deal? Or is it just because I grew up in a cold weather climate?
Yeah, I think here's how you answer that question. I think it's a regional thing, but if you know anybody that permanently lives in one of those places.
Well, Santa ain't wearing a Speedo,
no,
right?
He's not. But if you ask somebody that lives in Florida year round, including for the holidays, hey, can you imagine Christmas in the cold? What's their reaction? Is it yes or is it no because that's how I grew up?
I get it, but what I'm saying is all of the
motif is all yes.
Correct.
Everything about it is cold.
Correct.
You're not seeing, unless the occasional Coke ad with Santa on the beach, for the most part, you are seeing it in a snow globe.
Well, every Christmas Carol, every Christmas story, you know what I mean? It's snow and sleighs and hats.
Scrooge wasn't putting suntan lotion on somebody's back.
Correct.
During a Christmas Carol.
Would it be hard for you? If you lived in Arizona, would it be weird to put Christmas lights on a cactus?
I imagine they have to do that out there, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying for you personally.
Oh, for me, I would think it was odd, yes.
Or wouldn't it be, is it part of the magic of Christmas, the looking at the forecast to see if it's going to snow? Now, don't get me wrong. In a perfect world, I would love for it to be cold today, snow, white Christmas, and then everybody come out with, heaters and get rid of the snow on the 26th.
That might be the strongest shared take for you and I together, because I'm right there with you. If I could just have the snow Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, or both, don't care, and then it's done the rest of the year, I'd be totally fine.
Now, I will say that New Year's, again, going back to just this, what you're accustomed to, when I think of New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, I think of it as being cold. I've never known any different, so that has become New Year's Day and New Year's Eve to me involve cold weather, just simply based out of not tradition, but normalcy.
Sure.
But cold weather to me is based in rooted with Christmas, based on motif and cultural appropriation of the holiday, just because everything that we talked about is factored in with it. Anyway, if I was in Florida, it would be odd to me.
Yeah, the New
That's
Year's
all.
point is generally a regional thing. I would agree with you on that.
Plenty to get to today, including one area where I think Indiana might have overstepped a little bit. We haven't gotten into that, but we will get into that today. Big show lined up for you, as we talked about. Kenny Moore going to join us next. Mike Chappell joins us. Don Fisher joins us. And we're going to help out with your holiday shopping. It is what I do every year on the final show before Christmas, and I'll explain what I'm talking about in just a bit as well. But Kenny Moore yesterday, 2 interceptions. Kenny Moore today joins Query & Company. Does it next. cleaning notes. First, a car cleaning note. If you are a member of a monthly car wash program in Central Indiana, you have about a week left between now and the end of the year at any Central Indiana Jiffy Lube. Go in, point that out to the Jiffy Lube team member when you bring in your car, and $20 off your signature service oil change and a free tire rotation, courtesy of Jiffy Lube, because they're going to respect the fact game knows game. And they're like, hey, you care about the outside of your car. We care about the underside, the underbody of the car. We're going to help you out. That's at all Central Indiana Jiffy Lubes, your one-stop shopping for all your vehicle maintenance needs, and you never need an appointment. Simply point out that you are a member of a monthly car wash program, and they will do the rest. Also, this is the Jake Query Guys last-minute community service that I provide and have always provided on this program or other radio programs that I've had over the course of the years where I've been thrice fired. If you are right now, and I don't mean to stereotype guys. I mean, if you're one of our 19 female listeners and we can help you as well, by all means. But I'm assuming that women have not put themselves in this position because women think ahead and are planners and are, they know what the hell they're doing. Guys oftentimes a little more careless. Not to stereotype, but here we go. If you are just now going out and doing Christmas shopping, you basically are asking Noah for an umbrella on day 37. Okay, let's be real here. But if you are out right now, and this is the service that I provide, my cell phone number is 317-523-9288.
52390. That's good to have.
9288. That's a 317. Now, your number's you're blocked, Jimmy. 317-523-9288 is my cell phone number. If you are Christmas shopping and you are panicking because there is something that you can't find, and I know that now everything's available online. This game has become a little bit more passé than it used to be because most people have probably shopped online by now. But if for some reason you are like frantically driving around because there's one last item and you can't find it anywhere and you looked online, you can't get it on time at this point. I mean, that's the big thing, right? You wouldn't be able to get it on time if you went online. So if there's an item that you cannot find, you text me what that item is, or you can do it on the X Post Twitter, either one. But you let me know what item you're looking for, and then we let the masses know. Hey, Steve down in Beech Grove is looking for a insert name of, whatever. And then somebody goes, oh, my gosh, I was just at such and such store, and they just put out a box of them. They're available right now. Then I let them know, and then Steve knows, head over to that side of town.
Is there I know I'm putting you on the spot with this, so I apologize. At the peak of this, was there a highly successful,
yes.
This was the one I was very proud of. This happened.
When I did the morning show on IBC, we did this on a number of occasions, and I think that's how my buddy Joel Markman, it's Mark Lind, but I've always said Markman. Joel and I became buddies because that's how I met him, was through this venture. He was down on the south side looking for something for his daughter Reagan. I can't remember what it was, whatever the coveted toy was of that year, and he couldn't find one, and so he called in the show, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and then somebody called and said, holy cow, they have it like on the west side. And boom, we're off and running.
That's pretty cool.
There have also been a couple of times where guys have been looking for something for their wife that they couldn't find, and we were able to find it, right?
That's great.
Jake, shopping done over a month ago. That's good. Longtime listener living in Golden, Colorado, still tune in every week. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. Enjoy a Coors Light, right? That's what you do in Golden, Colorado. I picked up my buddy Matt Jacklin last night at the airport, coming in from Denver. As I always do when I pick up friends at the airport, I had a bottle of water right there for him in the car. I said, would you like a bottle of water? He said, I brought my own from Colorado. I said, oh, well.
Did he bring any for Eddie?
Brought a bag of candies for Eddie, which I'll deliver to him. Joining us now, speaking of delivering, a guy that delivered not one but two interceptions yesterday in the Colts win over the Tennessee Titans. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line. He essentially needs no introduction in the city of Indianapolis, even though I did just that. Kenny Moore joins us on the program. Kenny, how are you? Merry Christmas.
I'm doing well. Merry Christmas to you. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, let's begin with this, and I guess I'll get right to this. I find it fascinating because, obviously you guys are still numerically, mathematically, statistically, you are not eliminated from postseason contention, but a lot has to go your way. Fans and media get caught up in that. And be honest with me, What is the locker room conversation or focus? How is it different from one week to the next, the way those things can fluctuate?
Slim chance, man. I think the conversations that I've had, man, it's been playoff football. It's been playoff football. It's not. It doesn't come down to this game or that game. You gotta look at it as, every week is a big game. So I think for the locker room standpoint, you just got to keep everything at a small picture. You got to look at everything, week to week or day to day. You can't look at the bigger picture because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how the other team is going to play. You don't know how, we're going to play this weekend. You just got to approach the week like that. So we got a big game here coming up in New York, and we want to win this game. And we got to prepare, and when we walk into New York, we got to feel good about it and go win the game.
It's so funny to me because, Kenny, the reality is I think back to training camp. Heck, for that matter, I think back to training camp a year ago when you were, answering questions just about your status here and whatever else, and it seems like a blink of an eye. Then at other times, it seems like it's been forever ago because the year can be such a week-to-week grind. From a player's standpoint, which way does it feel?
How does the grind feel?
No, from a player's standpoint, does it feel like the year goes quick, or does it feel like it's been a long process?
Kind of both, to be honest. I mean, when you start thinking about OTAs and you start thinking about, okay, what we talked about in training camp and, what was the install then and there and bringing back plays to what we learned before, it kind of feels like it's been forever. But in the grand scheme of things, like, dang, like we into week what now? Like, it's flown by. And just taking advantage of all the chances, but every year has its own story, but I would say time has definitely flown.
Every year has its own story. So when the story is written on this one, to this point, I realize the easy answer here is going to be, well, the story is still going on, Jake. It's incomplete. To this point, what's been the story of this season?
That's a great question there, Mr. Jake. What would be the story now? I would say the story would be just taking care of opportunities, and if not, you will find yourself in a bigger hole. And if you do, maybe you will like where you are in chances, but I think you just gotta embrace the story for what it is and what it brings. You can't control the story. You just got to be able to respond.
Which was a bigger challenge, do you think, Kenny, for your team? And you guys responded to both of them the right way. Well, I was going to say between these two things, having your starting quarterback have to then take a seat and come back and wade through that, or having to bounce back from the disappointment in Denver?
What was tougher? Some great questions today. Hold on. I don't think the absence of quarterback was a distraction. I don't think that was a challenge. I don't think that was a challenge at all. I think that was just part of the story, to be honest. I think the response of Denver would probably be – I think that was more so the testing of the character of the team. Because we had already said before that game, how big of stakes that game was, and not coming up on the side of the column of results that we wanted to, we still want to stay alive, and even if it is a slimmer chance of making playoffs or we need help now from other teams, that doesn't mean that guys will check out or things just doesn't matter anymore. We know how much we love the game of football to want to stay in it and want to do it for each other, because at the end of the day, like, how we remember each other is how we give to each other. So at the end of the year, or this team won't be the same next year. This team won't be the same, in coming years. I want to remember my teammates. No matter what, if we win or lose, my teammate gave his all. He gave 100% to not only this organization, not only to the city, but he gave me his all as a brother. So I think that's what it all comes down to is your character and how you want to respond.
Colts cornerback Kenny Moore is our guest. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Kenny, going into the season, there were never questions directly about you. You're a veteran on this team. I think that everybody's confident in where your game is at and what you bring to the table for Gus Bradley's defense. There were question marks, though, around the rest of your secondary mates, especially that cornerback room. As you've seen this season go on, where have you seen the biggest growth and development from your fellow cornerbacks?
I've seen the biggest growth in our room as far as competing. I think there's always that one question where, the front office wants to know is, if this guy can compete, does he have competitive endurance? And I've seen that within the group, whether it's been like bouncing back from injuries, enduring those and, having to overcome those, or a guy stepping up into another guy's place, a guy first getting here and him being a part of the guys, being a part of the system and how he wants to, go about business as a professional with us. I've seen a lot of great measure throughout the group. And this is a group that, quote unquote, it was one of the weakest parts of the team. And whether you believe or disagree with that, I think this group has been one of the strong points of the team when talking about, the competitive nature. So I feel really good about the group, and I think, they have taken a lot of great strides. Yeah, there's room for improvement. That's room for improvement for everyone, including myself. However, I do like what I've seen in the younger players or players that we've got over claims or whatever it is, guys who have experience. I've seen a lot of growth there.
We have the local tie-in, obviously, with Juju Brents, and he goes down very early in the season. How much communication have you had with him over this season, and with that practice window being open for him? Does he seem hungry to try to get back out there, assuming he's cleared and ready to go?
Juju Brents, he loves football. For a guy that plays as a professional in the city that he grew up, I know he wants nothing more but to be on that field and representing for Warren and the east of Indy, where he came from. So I think he's attacked every day as he should, and he's always alert and urgent, and he's always present. He goes to meetings with us. He's hearing the communication and corrections and the coaching that goes into all those meetings. So he's in walkthroughs. He's very present around the organization. So his hunger is there. He's not checked out at all. And I like the work that I've been seeing that he's been putting in, on the field and, getting back to full strength. So I just told him I'm proud of him because I know how hard it is to go through an injury. You watching everybody else play, you really just, in the midst of everything, you feel like you're not really giving to the team. However, you are, because you're doing all you can to get back, and that's all a teammate can ask from you, and that's all you can ask from yourself. It's the only thing you can control, and you just got to embrace it. I just tell him it's part of your story. It's part of your story. I know he'll overcome it, and he'll appreciate it when he sees better days.
Kenny Moore, by the way, is the Colts nominee for the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. The fact that you know what high school your teammates went to probably is one of the reasons you're the nominee. That's impressive that you were able to pull Warren Central there, by the way. I know you've been in town for a while, but that's impressive, man.
Yeah, just keeping an eye out, just wanting to be intentional to a certain degree. I think I'm a really big fan of Juju in general, so I think he has a lot of great attributes. He brings a lot to his team, and even in the community, I went to his foundation's gala a couple weeks ago, and I'm very proud of him.
Kenny, with that, I'm curious of this. I saw Walter Payton play. I realize that I'm older than all of you guys, but Walter Payton, it goes without saying, people know of the character of Walter Payton and just the heart of Walter Payton. What does it mean for you to be nominated for an award that carries his name, and what is the responsibility that you feel?
The responsibility, first and foremost, I've always seen community service being the responsibility that we all should take pride in. There isn't a job title that says that, you have to do community service because you're this type of person and you make this type of money, or people look at you in this type of way. I learned to give when I thought that I didn't have anything to give as far as money, or I didn't know if I can make somebody smile, or I didn't know if reading this book would make a kid's day. But I began to learn, you got to give thanks way before the blessings come. And so, and by doing that, you got to serve, and you got to give, and you got to give wholeheartedly, unconditionally, and that just got to be the person that you are. So it's my DNA, to be honest. Growing up where I come from, I grew to realize very early on that it takes a village. I'm from a big family, and with that being said, having a lot of siblings, it's going to take a lot more people other than your single mom and grandparents. It's going to be able to chase us all over town and the extracurriculars that we had going on. So I had a lot of coaches, teachers, church family, extended family, friends of family that were always looking out for me, always supporting me, and I just didn't want to let those people down. That's my village, that's my city, and there's people that still support me, and I support them. So, but as far as being in the same breath as Walter Payton, as well as Man of the Year, it's just been very, very humbling, man. I was on a call the other day with his family, and just hearing them speak, and the stories that his kids have tell about the acts and what they've seen, growing up and everything it's inspiring, man. It's very empowering. It makes you want to be more than just, running up and down the field trying to chase somebody or trying to catch the ball. It's more so, I'm trying to tackle people, but how can I affect people? How can I impact people and touch people in a great way to empower them? So how can I, leave them better than, I met them? So, like I said, it's inspiring. The first time I got nominated a couple of years ago in 21, I had started a foundation, and with that being said, being nominated now, I just want to do so much more within the community, and knowing people or knowing how to go into the school system, education, youth development, childhood cancer, all these areas where, I just want to help everybody. So there's ways to do that, and I'm so happy that, I can be a part of this. I can be a part of this journey, and I think being tagged along with, being nominated for this type of honor is been such a blessing, to be honest.
Lastly, Kenny, before we let you go, because it is, and I know you guys got football left to play, right?
Yes, sir.
Getting the win yesterday over Tennessee, but it is Christmas, right? It's the week of Christmas. I don't know. I know you come from a big family. I know what family means to you. What did this season mean to you as a kid? When you look back when you were like 8 years old, is there a time where you remember, a certain gift that you wanted more than anything else, or whatever it may be, and just how life has come to this point now where you're able to provide?
Oh, man, I think for the most part, as a kid, you're not really focused on, what Christmas is about, the story in Bible terms, or the joy that you're supposed to have for people. And, whenever I was growing up, people used to say, it's giving season. It's like Merry Christmas, but it's giving season. And, you're giving that cheer, you're giving to others, you're giving wholeheartedly, you giving with no intent to receive. Like that's what I grew up on, and I didn't really understand that as a child. It was so much about what do I have? I want this, I want that. And just growing up now, it's more so, how can I make others around me feel special, feel valuable, feel, wanted and feel enough. So just I try to, there's certain things that we do on the field or in the locker room. You try to get, things for your teammates, your position group. All the work is appreciated. During this season, you make sure that, nothing was done in vain. The relationships that you've acquired over the year, all the hard work and workouts that we've gone through, all the games, you want to make sure that your teammates are appreciated. You want to make sure that you give them their flowers because this team won't be the same going forward. And then obviously with family, you don't speak to family much during the season. You'll see them on occasion. But, we've all made sacrifices as far as, communication, seeing them in person, asking how they doing, asking, are they okay? And then obviously I do a lot of little things as far as writing notes to like old classmates or teachers and stuff like that as well. Giving somebody a pair of gloves, something in a small gesture can go so far. Another thing that we like to do here in the organization, we like to thank all the other departments in the organization that, maybe they wear tough hats throughout the week, as far as like the cafeteria, the chefs in there, the workers in there, the janitors. So I like that part as well. But this season, like you asked, it's more so about, giving your heart, giving your time, giving that cheer, holiday cheer.
It's the season of giving. Yesterday it was the game of takeaway for Kenny Moore. 2 interceptions in the Colts' 38-30 win over Tennessee. Kenny, we appreciate it. Best of luck in finishing strong. And by all means, Merry Christmas to you and best of luck as well in the Walter Payton Man of the Year balloting. But we appreciate the time today.
Hey, thank y'all so much. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Y'all take care.
Appreciate it. Kenny Moore joining us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. By the way, Shane in Zionsville, I hope Shane's wife isn't listening. He needs an embroidered sweater for his wife. Anybody know where you can get an embroidered sweater this late? Let me know. 523-9288. Chapin just under 10. She is how old in singing this song? Isn't she like 14? This version
Isn't
of
it
the song?
something like that? We've had this conversation, I think, last year around the same time, Christmas, when Eddie was rolling as the Christmas DJ for
That's
the day.
probably right. Were we doing this show a year ago?
We were, believe it or not.
Wow. Time flies, does it not? We had only been together for like 2 months at that point, right?
Maybe for you it's flown by. And you get harassed as much as I do. It does not fly by.
Brenda Lee, by the way, was, 14 years old when that song was released. Mike Chappell, by the way, who is also 14, joins us in not 14 minutes, but about half that. We're going to talk about the Colts yesterday against the Tennessee Titans on the other side. 1 o'clock hour is underway in Indianapolis. For that matter, the 1 o'clock hour is underway everywhere in the Eastern time zone. My name is Jake Query, Jimmy Cook, Eddie Garrison, the other voices you hear on this program. Again, one of the things we're doing today, shopping assistance. If there's an item that you are too late to order online at this point and you are frantically searching for it, you send me that via text or on the X Post Twitter, and I will announce it and see if anybody else out there has just seen one of those items, and then we will tell you where you can find it. Shane needs a sweater he can get embroidered between now and tomorrow. That seems like a tough do, but if anybody knows a place where one could do it on the north side, let us know. Joining us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line, a guy that I'm sure has all of his Christmas shopping done, and he just posted that he always enjoys entering my world, or I don't think he said enjoys. Always interesting when he enters the world. Mike Chappell of CBS 4 and WXIN. Chap, at times when I listen to radio shows, I hear something that I'm going to violate, because a lot of times whenever I hear people make a personal comment to the person who is being interviewed, it feels like exclusion to the audience. You're like, hey, man, I'm not part of what you guys are talking about. So I will simply say this. Last time we talked, I had mentioned that we were getting ready to do the star Robin Miller, Friends of Robin Miller and Bill Benner dinner at Iaria's. We did do that since when we last talked on the radio and now. And it is simply my hope, Mike, that for all of our listeners, that they have opportunity to be able to enjoy that sort of a fellowship and gathering this time of year, because it's what it's all about, to be able to just see people and put everything aside and laugh and reminisce. And you guys, I just listened to it. But it truly is a special evening, and it would be my hope that everybody listening is able to enjoy that with people within their lives as well.
Well, that's why you do it. I mean, every year now, we keep losing people. John Vance and David Benner, and we lost Lyle Mann behind the scenes at the Star. So that's why you do it. You do it to get together, and I wasn't feeling real good. It was 2 weeks after my back surgery, but I wasn't going to miss it. So you just go and you sit and you talk, and I hope nobody took offense to that, because everybody should have that part of what they're doing now.
It's great. Nobody did by any means. And by the way, Lyle Manweiler, the name that the phone dropped out there, I wanted to make sure that we said the name as well, because it's about remembering those folks as well. David Benner, John Vance, Lyle Manweiler, Don Bates, a bunch of them. Chap, yesterday, the Colts, there are two ways to look at it, I guess, and I want you to tell me if Jimmy and I were being too critical. We both kind of agreed off the top of the show. It obviously was a very good and much-needed win for Indianapolis, and it was one where they rode their horse in Jonathan Taylor. And as great as that is, the problem is it's still – are we basically getting to the point where the Colts are just learning that Anthony Richardson is a dynamic quarterback with his legs, and maybe – the passing game is something that they don't continue to try to develop because the strength is elsewhere? Are they playing with fire by not forcing him to have to throw more than 11 times a game?
Well, yesterday you can't. I mean, when you run for 335, you're not going to throw much. But after the interception, they ran 12 straight times. To me, that was a sign that, we can't rely right now on Richardson. But to me, there's nothing that's going to happen positively over the next two games that you're going to go into January, February, March and say, Richardson's a guy. Doggone it, he's a guy, and we have no doubt. I just think that time has passed. So I think they know what they have, sort of. It's some version of Justin Fields, kind of. Are you okay with that? I tend to think at this level you have to have a better passing game. Again, 11 attempts yesterday, which is funny. I'm a stat guy. That was the fewest in a Colts game in a win since Marty Damarez in 1976. So that's not how you win consistently. So that's the only. No, it's not the only. One of the negatives coming out of this year is I don't think you're going to know truly what you have in the guy that has to be the future of the franchise. Now, the worst thing is you're not going to make the playoffs, but I would almost argue that knowing Richardson, what he is, was more important all along anyway. So yeah, that's I don't think there's anything can change over the last two games other than him just going south, even further south. So that's the bad part of this season.
Chap, and I believe I have this part of the scenario right. If the Broncos win on Saturday, it's over, correct? Like they get the playoffs and that's it, or is there still life after that if they win?
No. The easiest avenue is the Colts win 2, and the Chargers to lose 2.
Right, I forget. I apologize. I'm chalking up L.A. That's right. I forgot that the Chargers play New England. I'm chalking that up as a.
They finish it.
Right.
They finish it New England and the Raiders. Which
I forget about the Chargers element of it because I've slightly kind of put that to bed once Denver didn't help them out. Okay, so I guess what my lead-in question to that regard was, I want to see Anthony Richardson throw the football more. Like I do. I don't care if that is not conducive to their goal of winning right now. Clearly it's not, because as you mentioned, the running game's going as great as they did, and after that pick, you really don't see him throw the football anymore yesterday. Is there a world where that happens regardless of playoffs still alive or not in these final 2 games, or are they at a point where they're just going to do whatever they think gives them the best chance to win? Because I'm looking at the scenarios here, and I'm at a point where, yeah, I'd like to see just a Richardson do-it-all type of day, regardless of what happens there.
I don't see a scenario where they draw up a game plan where they say, we're throwing the ball 40 times because we have to see what Richardson can do. No,
Could you meet me in the middle and say 30?
That's not in the middle. I was going to say 20.
Well, we're at 11 now, so like it's hard. You know what I mean?
Again, yesterday was skewed, and they were not going to throw the ball 20 times when they're running the ball for 335. But right now they're in let's win. I just don't see any scenario where he can show you in 2 games that he can hit layups. His first 2 passes, he dirted one to Mo Ali, and then he sailed one over, was it Pitt?
So, Chap, I guess the best way to ask would be this. Do you feel that they are incorporating Anthony Richardson as in terms of him running the ball in favor of throwing it because, A, that's what defenses are giving them, or B, that's what they feel is the only way to move the football with him, or the better way to move the football with him?
Well, but again, they threw it twice early and 3 times really if you include the interception. So they were still had a game plan where he needed to complete 3rd down a couple of times, and he didn't early, and then the bad interception. So I still think they're dialing up the game the way they need to. They're really using him as a runner the way they need to since he's been back from being benched. So it's so hard. It's been so hard to gauge him as a passer because that's what they're doing. When he dirts the one to Mo Ali or he misses the next 3rd down pass, that's telling you something. It just is. I realize he's now had 15 or 16 starts and all that. So I think he's given you a pretty good idea, at least for this year, what he can be. We talked last week and the week before that, remember, his past off season, it was about rehab and not really working on his game. This off season, he better work on his game a ton. Take some time off and enjoy life and all that. But kind of channel your inner Peyton Manning and spend time, because you can still see that the footwork's not there, and so much of what he's getting done, certainly in the run game, but in the pass game, it's on arm strength, and it's not really setting his speed, and that's what you've got to see. And sometimes the quarterback is who he is. If you've got a hitch in your throw, they can't cure it. And if you can't get your feet right, I don't know. I still think he's way too young to give up on that. But boy, you've got to have the off season to show some improvement. You cannot win in the NFL completing 50% of your passes. Can't do it. I don't care how good your run game is, how great your defense is. can't do it. And right now, that's what you want from him, and he's not even there yet.
Chap, it sounds to me, Mike Chappell's our guest from CBS 4 and WXIN Fox 59. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. We've talked to you each week, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'm going to tell you what I'm hearing, and then you tell me if I'm off base. It sounds to me like you are closer to, I'm not going to say finality, but thinking that there is the possibility that Richardson is never going to get there, more so than in the past when we have talked to you about it. Has something changed in terms of just your overall observation of him?
I'm probably 40-60 against, and what's changed is nothing's changed. We're still seeing the ball he threw to A.D. Mitchell was a great throw. It really was. But there's still way too many misses. And I would like to have seen something by now. I just really wouldn't. I haven't. At some point, I don't think we're there yet because, again, he's 22. It's way too soon to give up on him. That's why I think there won't be a lot of change with this team, which will really anger the fan base. I understand. I just don't think you give up on a kid that's 22. And we've seen the talent. We've seen the arm talent. And what they have to find out in the offseason is, can you bring back, Jim Caldwell? Remember Jim Caldwell and his what he did with Peyton Manning? Can you fix what's obviously not a final product yet? I hope so. I lean towards no because I haven't seen it, and I hope I'm wrong because if he's not the guy, this fan base and this organization is looking at, I don't know, put a number on it, 2 or 3 years of rebuild. And if he's not the guy, major rebuild. So I'm hoping that an off-season cures that. I just haven't seen enough in my mind. Yeah, I think so. It's more like, nah, I really have questions.
Chap, we talk so much about the development or lack thereof, or just, the future of Anthony Richardson. Has it distracted us from the fact that maybe not to the same level, but do we need to see the same level of growth and maturity within the profession out of Shane Steichen? Is he still also a work in progress?
Oh, no question. And then what you have to ask is how has his progress been impeded by having a quarterback that can't complete a 6-yard pass on 1st and 10? So, yeah. Yes, but so I'm not even remotely ready to give up on Shane Steichen at all. It's just, and again, this is his quarterback. He had to sign off on Richardson when he got here, so that's why. No, I'm much closer to being a Steichen guy than I'm a Richardson guy. The problem is they're tied together, at least right now.
Does that mean, Chap, that everybody's tied together? Because the argument that we've kind of had the last couple of weeks is that, well, Chris Ballard's tied to Anthony Richardson, and, well, Shane Steichen gave a voice to that, so he's tied to Anthony Richardson. So does that mean that all three of them are bunched together, and assuming they go status quo, however next season goes is probably your deciding factor with the direction of all three of those spots?
Well, you really want to anger the fan base in the holidays, don't you? Yeah, I do. I think they are tied together, and I think it would be really difficult to bring in a new GM, as we've talked, and say, here's your head coach, and by the way, here's your quarterback who, maybe he's okay and maybe he's not. I don't think that works. That's why you either make a few tweaks to the staff and bring it back, or you blow it up. And I just don't think the owner's going to blow it up. I just don't. And whether the fan base likes that or not, I know they don't. I just don't. I think that's too dramatic. Although I'd have an easier time arguing to blow it up than I would to bring everybody back, or most everybody back. I just don't know that the owner's going to do that. Blow it up.
Chap, it's Festivus. You don't need to get mad at me. I'm sure the fan base is angering or is airing their grievances across the board at West 56, not just today, but year round. So don't fully point me in the direction of angering the fan base, okay?
Gotcha.
Speaking of moving forward, let's operate underneath the idea of it being status quo for them. Do you think they have clear identifiers for where this roster needs to grow
I mean, I know we still have a couple games left, but I've pointed, as is Jake, the tight end room. I would like to see a couple transformations defensively. Do you think they have pretty clear in their mind where they need to make the biggest leaps next year?
Yes, I do. Tight ends, definitely tight ends. I think another receiver. Another receiver. I always want receivers. I just always want receivers. Maybe a veteran lineman, offensive lineman. Secondary is really strange because you can say, well, we got Juju Brents. Well, yeah, you got Juju Brents who can't stay on the field. I think he's got the chance to be a really good player, but he can't stay on the field. You're probably going to lose Julian Blackman, so you're going to need a safety. I think they know. I would like to see a better pass rusher. I've been a little disappointed in Latu's second half of the season. Maybe he's worn down a little bit. So I think the defense needs another pass rush guy. You always need pass rushers, but the offensive line's in pretty good shape. Braden Smith, you don't know, but boy, I think Bortolini and Gonsalves, that block he had on one of Taylor's runs was really pretty good, pulling from right tackle to the left side. So I think they've got 2 or 3 spots. And then they need a veteran running back. They need a running back to give Taylor help. So, yeah, I think they do. But none of it matters if you don't get the quarterback fixed. I mean, I don't care who the GM is, who the coach is. You know, how good would Tony Dungy have been here if Peyton Manning wasn't his quarterback? I don't know. Got to get the quarterback fixed.
I mean, you're not wrong about that, Chap, but at some point, when Jake and I and the rest of the media continue to point out flaws in the roster and we get pushback against those flaws and then those flaws appear at the end of the season, it gets frustrating to the point of, yeah, the quarterback would be nice, but boy, you could help out some other areas too while you're at it, you know?
I agree. And most teams have flaws because you can only do so much. But yes, they have issues, and that they appear bigger flaws when you're not going to win. You're going to be 8-8 or heavens forbid worse. So your flaws look worse. But yeah, let's not kid ourselves. The only problem isn't Anthony Richardson; it's elsewhere. But I'm not sure that better tight end play. Well, I say that, and then if Drew Ogilvie catches a touchdown pass, it looks better. So yeah, there are flaws. They just look worse when you're not going to the playoffs.
You know what's interesting, Chap? I looked this up. Tim Tebow started 16 games. Now, he played in more than that. He played in double that, but he started 16 games in the NFL. And after 16 games, clearly, when the New York Jets said, you know, enough, we've seen enough, nobody else jumped in at the quarterbacking position for another opportunity. In his career, he completed 47.9% of his passes. That's right around where Richardson is, right?
What's Justin Fields' pass or completion percentage? Probably not very good. I think it's hard. It's hard to win that way. It's just hard to win that way. There's going to be 5-6 plays every game that the quarterback has to make with his arm. He just does, and I just don't have confidence right now that Richardson can do well. He's not done it enough in games. So, again, that's got to be priority one this offseason.
Fields is at 61%.
His lowest of his career was his rookie season at 58.
I wouldn't have guessed that, obviously, but he was good. He was lucky to throw for 200 yards in a game.
Sure.
Didn't happen a lot. But, if you think you can win that way, go ahead. I just think it's hard.
Mike Chappell is our guest on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. Chap, obviously, Colts getting set for New York. But for you personally, for the holiday, any big plans for Christmas itself?
Well, as we speak, we're driving to see my kids and grandkids in Portville. So, and we're going to have breakfast with stepdaughter and granddaughter on Wednesday. So it'll be a nice holiday. We enjoy it with the kids.
That's what it's all about, Chap, and we certainly appreciate it. I appreciate the time each and every week. Safe travels to you, and by all means, a very safe and joyous Merry Christmas to you.
Talk at you next week.
All right, Mike Chappell joining us, Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. Merry Christmas indeed. Don Fisher going to join us on the other side. Is that correct, Eddie?
I think.
We'll see if Don Fisher joins us on the other side. We're talking IU either way because college football playoff discussion to get to, college basketball as well. Do it on the other side here just a couple of minutes from now with Fish, the voice of the Hoosiers, next. We made it this far. Halfway through before we got whammed. Now, should I not confess this to you?
You have already, and I'm in the same boat as you, so it's a safe space.
I like this song.
It's a good song.
Listen, George Michael, who passed on Christmas Day, and Christmas Day is also the birthday of Ricky Henderson, who passed over the weekend. Ricky Henderson, by the way, may be the greatest baseball player of his era. And I know people are like, well, come on, man. Barry Bonds. Listen, he's the greatest leadoff hitter of all time. He's the greatest base stealer of all time. He's the all-time runs scorer. There's a reason why Ricky Henderson late in his career was a consistent late signing for playoff or World Series contending teams. There just is, because Henderson was not the flashiest. I think people forget how powerful his bat was in terms of his leadoff ability. But the other thing about Ricky Henderson to me that jumped out, baseball, and what I'm about to say is not meant in any way, shape, or form to be like some sort of a hot take, so I hope it doesn't come off that way. But I don't even know how to word this. But in my childhood and for the better part of Americana, baseball has typically been seen as a sport that was played by players really of one of three backgrounds. Guys that were from Oklahoma or Michigan or just kind of, outskirt, more rural areas. Or, for that matter, in terms of American black players, oftentimes they were from the Deep South. I mean, like Alabama and, the warm weather areas. But it wasn't a sport that was typically seen as one where great players came out of the cities. And I don't mean, when I say cities, I'm not saying that as a euphemism for saying African-American civilization. I'm just saying it didn't seem like there were a lot of players where they were born in an inner city environment per se, or just, period. I mean, Kirby Puckett, I think, was from Chicago. Ricky Henderson was, even though he was born in, and I can't remember where I read that he was born, but he moved at the age of 2 to Oakland, essentially, and grew up in Oakland, and then was the A's is where he really, burst onto the scene and became originally known as strictly a base stealer and a guy that spoke in the third person, which was kind of the fun thing about him. But what people didn't realize is I think the guy was the consummate professional leadoff man where a walk or a base hit for Ricky Henderson was a triple automatically. And that doesn't consider and factor in the fact of his ability as a home run leadoff hitter. I mean, he was a power hitter and defender that he was a 5-tool player. And if you think about the all-time greats, I think he's the most underrated player of his sport. Because of the fact that when it comes to Ricky Henderson, Henderson's game itself, if you were to ask people, hey, tell me the top 10 baseball players of all time. Tell me the top 20 baseball players of all time. Henderson is absolutely one of those guys, but he would go you'd go 25 deep before you hear his name because people would automatically say, if they're a younger person, well, Bonds, Griffey, Pujols, Schmidt, and then you get into Ruth, DiMaggio, and all the Yankees, you forget about Ricky Henderson. And the guy flat out was one of, if not the top 5 or 10 players of all time. Strictly my opinion, but a vastly underrated player. And as I said, Godspeed to a speed god. Ricky Henderson was, you won't see another one like him. No question about that. Joining us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line, he is the radio voice for Indiana basketball as well as Indiana football. The Hoosiers season coming to an end on Friday night, I know certainly in disappointing fashion, but Don Fisher, I think people need to not only did you get to call the closest game in terms of the first 4 that have taken place in the college football playoff, but I just thought that game, Notre Dame is really good. I think that game told us almost more about Notre Dame. But, man, what a season for Indiana. And, what better way now to look back on it and just simply say that I really liked that book. That was in the chapters of Indiana football, we just saw the best one. It was a heck of a year.
There's no question about that, Jake. I know there's a lot of people screaming bloody murder that Indiana shouldn't have been in and all those kinds of things. But if you look at the other 3 ball games that were played, how can you say that Indiana was any worse than any of the other 3 that lost? So from my perspective, look, Indiana was exposed a little bit in this ball game. I don't think there's any question. The offensive line struggled a little bit to protect Curtis Rourke, and obviously the passing game didn't work nearly as well. The run game was, I don't want to say non-existent, but it wasn't as spectacular as it's been throughout the year. And again, that's a product of offensive line play, and I'm not putting it all on the offensive line. Trust me, there were plenty of tackles missed in this contest as well. But the truth of the matter is Indiana deserved it as much as any of those other teams that got beat in the first round. And I look at it this way. It was a historic season for IU in football, and never have we won 11 games before. I shouldn't say we. Never has Indiana won 11 games in the past. And to get to the college football playoff, they did what they had to do. I am proud of Kurt Sugnetti and the program, all the players that performed this year. It's been a great, great season for Indiana football, and arguably as great a season as they've ever had.
And, Don, I want to go back to this as well, because you're right. I mean, obviously, when it comes down to it, in the trenches, maybe they were outsized by Notre Dame. And I'm not a Notre Dame fan. I mean, I've been open about that. But I think Notre Dame this year is tremendous. I mean, I think the way Marcus Freeman just has a really, really good football team. And Notre Dame I was telling somebody, I'm like, before everybody jumps to the conclusion about Indiana here, let's see what Notre Dame does, right? I mean, if Notre Dame wins the national title, you're going to go, okay, well, they lost by 10. Your overall thoughts just on Notre Dame and maybe in comparison to what you saw from Big Ten teams over the year and where Notre Dame ranks with that.
Well, I think you're right about the trenches were where the game is won and lost almost every time you play a football game. And I thought Notre Dame was specifically really good defensively in the trenches, and I think their offensive line performed extremely well. I just look at it this way. When you look at a Notre Dame football program that has had national notoriety for their entire existence for the most part, and you go up against a team like that in their home arena, so to speak, and you do it with a ball club that's really well coached, no question. And I like the fact that when Indiana, of course, got down to the final few minutes of that ball game, were able to still show fight at the very end. And I don't think that Notre Dame was playing a lot of second-teamers out there at any point in that contest. So it's not like Indiana just got blown out by a Notre Dame team that was incapable or was capable of doing so. I think it was just a product of the fact. And I said this to you guys, I think I said this to you probably about week 4 or 5 or 6, maybe 7. I don't remember when I said it to you, but you guys asked me where I thought Indiana was vulnerable. And I said, I think the only place they're vulnerable is when they face a team that's better than them from a talent standpoint. And I think that's what we saw on Friday night.
Don, in the Voice of the Hoosiers, Don Fisher is our guest. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. In the Ohio State game, I'd asked you where you felt like the game turned, and you had mentioned the special teams unit for sure. There were too many mistakes in that game that led to that getting turned on its head. When you look back at this game against Notre Dame, was there an area where you could point to and say, yeah, that's where things turned for IU?
No, I mean, again, I just think Indiana didn't perform up to their capability, and the primary reason was because of Notre Dame. I just think Notre Dame was a better football team, and in this particular sense, I think Notre Dame's got a chance to do something special in this event, in this college football playoff. But they're going to run up against the Georgia team that everybody thinks, is really, really good at the beginning of the season. I think they were picked 1 or 2, something like that. And they've lost 3 ball games this year, and yet they won so that they could get into the playoffs. So I don't know how to judge those other ball clubs. I don't see enough of them. All I know is that this football team did as well or better than anybody expected this season under a new coach, transfer portal guys galore. guys that had never played at Indiana before, and they came together because of that coaching staff and Curt Cignetti. And I think you just have to celebrate what you have a chance to celebrate, and really look forward to what's to come, because I think it's going to be special at IU.
Hey, Don, I'm looking at it going, you know what? The national experts can sit here and question Indiana and the college football playoff all they want. All I know is what I'm hearing is Charlie Brown's teacher talking, and then Indiana college football playoff, Indiana college football playoff. And I'm like, let's go, right? I'll take it. I mean, we've seen the other end of this, right? So in that regard, hey, I'll take the press. Now, basketball side of things, I wanted to ask you this, Don, because Indiana – one game left against Winthrop, and then you really basically get into Big Ten play from there with Rutgers, who's pretty darn good to start out the new year. But
yeah.
I look at Mike Woodson's team, and I say, okay, I've got a pretty good idea what they have in Malik Renew. I really like Renew's consistency. We've talked about that. And I think Ballo is a good player on the inside, particularly, just in terms of rebounding and defensively. But if you had to pick a player or two that Mike Woodson probably is most wanting to see consistent second or third option offensive balance from, who would it be?
Well, I think going into the season, I thought Mbako would be the guy that you'd really be counting on. And, of course, he started out like a house of fire and hasn't done nearly as well since then. And I just don't know if he's the guy or not. But if there is a guy that this team is going to have to depend on throughout this season to be the key for them, I think it's got to be Miles Rice. I think Rice is potentially a really, really good point guard. And he's also capable of scoring the basketball when it's needed. And in some ball games, he's been more of a distributor and hasn't scored as much, i.e. the Tennessee-Chattanooga game, 4 points in that contest. I think he had 2 in another game about a week ago. But he's also been very capable of scoring the basketball. He showed that in the Nebraska game once again. So if there's anybody I think there's going to have to be a key to this basketball team, I think it has to be Miles Rice.
Don, do you think through, and I guess when you look back at, the games against Louisville and Gonzaga, maybe this will be the answer to the question, but as you get set for conference play, do you think the Indiana staff is pleased with the different looks they've gotten from the opponents in the pre-conference that have given them good representation of what they're going to see in the Big Ten?
Well, you'd have to ask the staff that. If you're asking me, well, just from my perspective alone, I don't think the schedule has given them enough of the really tests that they need. I say that in the sense that, everybody at the beginning of the season said it was going to be a weak schedule, and the best teams that they've played have beaten them. So let's face facts here. This is a basketball team that has not found itself yet. It needs to find itself here in the next 2 weeks. They're going to face a Rutgers team that's very good, as you point out. The Winthrop team that you're talking about being the last non-conference game is a 10-4 team, and they've had a good program at Winthrop for many years now. I mean, they've been really well coached, and it's a program that has always been difficult for the majors who they face because they're a mid-major team. Anytime you face this ball club, you've got a chance of getting beat if you don't have your hat on right. And so right now, the biggest issue I have with Indiana basketball and with this basketball team that we're seeing currently is the fact that I don't see the energy and effort level that we need to see game in, game out, minute to minute in every ball game. They sometimes get off to a good start, then they fade, and sometimes they don't off to a very good start at all and have to try to catch up, which is not their forte right now. So I think this is a ball club that has to rely on effort, toughness, physicality, those kinds of things. And if you want to know more about what that looks like, take a look at the Auburn-Purdue game this past weekend.
Well, man, Auburn, there are some teams that are just so darn fast, right, Don? I mean, you watch it, and Auburn just suffocating defensively at times, at all ends of the floor. All right, Don, so if we want to see that in terms of Santa's wish list for Indiana basketball, lastly, I'd like to know, Don Fisher's 2024 Christmas, you're asking Santa for what? What is it that Don Fisher wants more than anything else?
We just saw it. Indiana football winning. You kidding me?
Yeah, actually, it was right around this time a year ago where Santa delivered you Curt Cignetti, right? So Santa's saying to himself, what more do you want, right?
Exactly right. That's why I will not be negative at all about Indiana football right now.
Well, I think a lot of people. You know what, Don? Look, it was great. I mean, I went to IU. The vast majority of my lifelong friends are IU folks, and all of them said the same thing. Yeah, they would have liked the result to be different, but it was just surreal and magical to be up there and to enjoy it. And I think Notre Dame fans kind of understood and appreciated what they were seeing as well from that. So they got the taste of it. Now it's just a matter of trying to get back. But it was definitely fun on Friday night, and I'm sure it was cool to be able to call that as well, even though it was probably cold more than cool. But nonetheless, it was pretty exciting.
It was exciting. There's no question. This whole season has been more than most Indiana fans could ever wish for. That's why I'm telling you right now, that was my Christmas wish a year ago. Just get better, Indiana. Well, they got a lot better.
Don, very Merry Christmas to you. I appreciate the time each and every week as always, but certainly hope you have a very safe and joyous holiday season.
I appreciate it. Merry Christmas to everybody.
All right, Don Fisher, the voice of the Hoosiers on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Gas Line. There is one thing that happened in that Indiana game beforehand that is not something that I think is an overall negative, but I do think took place, and I think there were people that were like, wait a minute, and I'll explain what I'm talking about on the other side. here's my observation of what happened on Friday night. And I want to be very clear here when I say this. This is not me condemning the individual per se. And it's not the reason Indiana lost. But I'd be curious, let me say it, and then you guys tell me whether or not I sound like the old guy at the end of the Muppet Show.
All right.
When Curt Cignetti was hired at Indiana, he came out and to the Indiana fans, that was when he gave the whole, Purdue sucks, and so do Ohio State and Michigan, and the crowd went crazy. And then when he said, Google me, I win, Google me, he was saying that actually to the Indiana fan base of look, calm down. I win. I win. Google me if you don't know who I am. He wasn't saying it to other teams. But as the year went on, I think Cignetti, because his bravado and the quotes became kind of part of his shtick. And I say shtick not in an indicting way. I think he knew, it got Indiana attention. I mean, they were, game day came to Bloomington, and he was going on national shows where they were eating up his, I'll say arrogance for lack of a better phrase, his confidence. They were eating up his confidence in his quotes. And everybody loved it, and it was fun and everything else. And I think there was definitely, and that's what Indiana needed. He was the perfect guy in the perfect situation with the perfect approach when Indiana needed it. And it was wonderful. And then they got into the college football playoff to go up against Notre Dame, and I think there were a lot of Indiana fans, truth be told, that were like, hey, I love everything about it. I'm eating it up. I'm wearing the Cignetti shirts. I'm all about this guy. But once they got into the playoff, I think there were definitely people that were like, it got us to this point. It got the team to believe, and it put Indiana on the map, and it got us the attention that was necessary. And even without winning the Big Ten, it got us comfortably into the playoff because SMU and Clemson were teams that were behind them. So they were comfortably in. And everybody's like, perfect. Now let's go win the Natty, right? And then he got invited onto the college game day set. And I truly do believe this. He got invited on there, and when he was sitting on the set with Kirk Herbstreit and Desmond Howard and Nick Saban, who he'd worked for, and McAfee, I think because McAfee was up there, and part of that bravado was something that he and McAfee had fun with. Not in a bad way, but over the course of the year, he'd had fun with that, and McAfee kind of, would egg it on with his energy level, and Cignetti was eating it up and bought into it. I think in that moment, 2 hours before the game, he took one too many shots. Using that as a euphemism. I'm not saying he was drinking. He went one too many times to the batter's box because when he was sitting up there at a time when most coaches then before the game are like, look, this can be a big challenge for us, but this is what I think Notre Dame's outstanding. We're going to have to play well in the trenches. I think we're going to have to establish our run, whatever. Instead of doing those things, I think momentarily he himself, for the very first time, even though Cignetti had created almost a character of who he was in order to get people to buy into Indiana football and buy into Curt Cignetti, those purchases were complete. They'd already been made. And I think he went one too many spins at the wheels, probably the better way of saying it, by going out there and kind of forgetting that he was no longer on those fun, gimmicky shows, and he was now on a legitimate pregame show. And while it did not impact the way his team played or the way Notre Dame played against them, the things that he was saying of we just go out there and we don't just beat teams in the top 25, we kick their, by that sort of bravado in that moment, I think he kind of forgot the moment that he was in, and that led to the increase of the chatter against Indiana once they lost. None of that is going to harm Indiana football or Curt Cignetti, but if people want to know why Indiana loses by 10 and Tennessee gets blown off the field, Tennessee was done before Tennessee was a joke in that game. They were completely not even in the same stratosphere as Ohio State. Clemson against Texas, hung around, but clearly Texas was a better team than Clemson, and Texas was in control of that game the whole time. Penn State against SMU, and I thought SMU would play really well, but Penn State came out and got right after SMU's quarterback, derailed them, and SMU was a joke in that game. They had no business being on that field against Penn State. They got blown out. This is what happened, and people that are like, I can't believe these college football playoff games are this uneven. That's why it's a big deal when an 8 seed beats a 1 seed in the NBA. It's playoffs. That's what happens, right? There's a reason 16 seeds don't usually beat a 1 seed, or 9 seeds don't usually beat a 1 seed in round number 2, and it's an upset when it happens. The team that's ranked higher should win. But in Indiana's case, the critics and the naysayers and the I told you so's came out in even fuller force because of the clip of Cignetti right before the game where he, in the moment, I think, forgot which show he was on and what moment he was in, and rather, finally, he bought into his own caricature as opposed to just finally saying, let's go play football. You could comment on the other side, Jimmy. What year would you guess this song is? I'll go
91.
Ooh, that
You think I'm way late on that?
yes.
I played well earlier with
You did. You
our
were
game,
right.
but-
And I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing. I'm gonna say 74.
Ooh.
that feels too far the other way.
No, he's not close enough. 1970.
Is it really?
That?
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you may celebrate. But obviously, with this Christmas Eve, two things that we're doing here on the program. One of them is if you are out.
Let the record show, by the way, we both went over by Price is Right rules, so
That's right.
we both lost there.
Closest without going over was me, though.
But you
Oh,
went
no,
over.
I went over, yeah.
we both.
You're right.
It's a showcase that didn't have a winner.
Correct. There you go.
Have your pet spayed or neutered. Goodbye, everybody.
So here's what we're doing if you are out Christmas shopping at this point, and I realize most people did it online a month ago, but
Educating and entertaining.
we are trying to do
As
that.
you
We're
say it.
trying to help people out with their shopping needs. For example, somebody is looking for a place to get a sweater embroidered at this late juncture on the Northwest side. If anybody knows of a place to do that, send me a text, let me know. If there's a tricky item you cannot find, you still have an hour left to use our community board to let me know what you're looking for, and we will let you know via everybody responding where you can find it. But in terms of response, there was obviously a lot of response about Indiana, and I do agree with what somebody else said. Indiana had the misfortune of playing on Friday night when the other games were on Saturday, and so as a result, that was the easy. If people would have waited, or if all four games would have been in the same day, Indiana's would have kind of gotten lost in the shuffle. But and yes, I know it was a 10-point game, and it was more than that. I mean, they were down for the most part 3 scores the whole game. But in terms of what I was saying about Cignetti pregame and how that probably led to some of the critique of Indiana, Jimmy, your thoughts?
You're undoubtedly right that it added more fuel to the fire for detractors of Curt Cignetti to come after him after going on game day. The idea of him doing that, though, didn't surprise me. Him carrying that bravado, that like WWE heel type, cutting a promo that he's done all season, be it on game day or, at his different media stops around the country, was very true to his brand. And he was true to that to the very end. I stand by the fact that without that type of arrogance, cockiness, confidence, whatever you want to call it, Indiana doesn't have the type of season that they had. I wasn't bothered by it as much. I'll admit, I was taken aback with how close it was to kick, because ordinarily, if you are the window of the nighttime game on ESPN and game day comes to town, that's happening 9 or 10 in the morning, and you still have 6, 7, 8 hours before you're going to go out there and play a football game. So it meshes cleanly, and usually they'll have both coaches. For this game, you're talking about 90 minutes or so before kickoff, and he's, yucking it up on the game day stage. That didn't bother me as much. What bothered me is they weren't the Indiana team that was advertised through the course of this season when it actually mattered. And by that, I mean Curtis Rourke looked shell-shocked. They punted twice down 17 in the second half. You can't talk that type of way. I don't care how arrogant you want to be, and surrender Cobra on what you're fighting for. In other words, waving the white flag, punting the ball away like they did in that contest and trying to still establish the run when, yes, your defense is making enough stops for you, but if you don't show some kind of life offensively, you're toast. And people could say all they want, okay, well, they got it close, and boy, if they would have converted that 2-point conversion, they're looking good on the onside kicks. Maybe they get that. It was too little too late at that point. Even then, you have 30 seconds to go get down the field, score again, and get a 2-point conversion. And yes, there were some reserves out there for Notre Dame at that point. So I had a bigger issue with what we were sold all year and what we were sold 90 minutes before kick was they're not going to be afraid of anybody. They are going to force the issue. They are going to take chances, and they are going to live and die by that type of bravado. And they never did that offensively on Friday night. And that's what bugged me the most. I don't care that he did the press tour. I would agree with you, Jake, because you made a clear distinction there. You're not saying that it was causation correlation of he went on game
Correct.
day and they lost.
I think it was a dumb thing to do.
Yeah,
I think it was a dumb thing to do, but I don't think it was the reason they lost.
It added fuel to people to point after the fact and say, see, like, yeah, it did not do him any favors, but it was very much who he was all year, except when it mattered most. And the lack of offensive creativity. And Notre Dame's a great team. Like, give credit to Notre Dame defensively, but I'm sorry, if you have a 4th and 10 at midfield and it's in the fourth quarter and it's do or die for you, you go for that. I don't care how well your defense is playing. That's what bugged me, and that's what I think bugged Indiana fans more than anything is to get to that stage in that moment and them look as lifeless they did offensively. You give credit where you can to Notre Dame, but also I felt like some of those punts were saving face punts that just didn't have any purpose in what this season was about for Indiana.
Look, they got rolled, and when he decided to punt, I'm like, wait a minute, like you're talking about kicking everybody's ass, and now you're basically punting and waving the white flag, right?
And he gave logic to it at the end, like, the defense is playing well, and we wanted to, continue to rely on them. I mean, I get that in theory, but you're at a point where you're in the end game of that ball game. It's no longer the second quarter, and you're trying to, turn the tide and pin them deep. It's middle to late in the fourth, and you need to start making some moves.
Here's what Curt Cignetti did in that game. He took a year in which he is given total credit, and people should be grateful for it. And then because of not going on game day, that's the norm for when game day is there for coaches to go on there beforehand. I don't know if Marcus Freeman went on or not. I don't know that.
Did not.
But
he did not, at least in that capacity.
But not going on game day was not the issue. The issue is Indiana fans aren't going to want to hear this. But when you go on there with that kind of bravado 2 hours before the game and you make those kinds of comments and you're bragging about beating Coastal Carolina 2.5 years ago at a different school, and you mention Nebraska, who you rolled up on, who by the end of the year sucked, right? When you're throwing, there's a time for that. There is a time for that, and the time was to get you to that point. But when you have that kind of bravado pregame, and then at half you're getting beaten soundly, and after the game you were beaten soundly, and you have to explain things, you look like somebody that was overmatched at that point. He looked like a used car salesman at that point.
Well, and
the guy's a great football coach, but in that moment he put himself in that position.
And that's to your point about going to the well one too many times. He put himself in that situation. And look, the critiques still come either way. And you've seen Paul Feinbaum tried to torch, basically a pure puppet for the SEC, tried to torch Indiana about them not deserving to be there, and came after Cignetti, and he cited game day. Like, everybody is pointing to that.
That's what I mean. He put himself in that position.
He should have had the foresight to not have done that because he put himself in that position. But also, there is part of me, and this is why it makes the decisions in the game, punting late, so frustrating. All year, that trash talk on game day is matched by the decisions made on the field. And you understand that. You're like, okay, this is who that guy is. I can live by that. When he only meets half of the equation in the biggest game of the year, that's frustrating. Because then it looks like, well, was it just all talk? Was it? Like, you talked this big game about how you're going to, I'm obviously cleanly paraphrase here for our airways, but you're going to knock the tar out of everybody, and you're going to punt late in a game, down 17, where you need offense. Like, that was frustrating to me. However,
he put himself in position to be ridiculed.
All that said, this is the part that I don't want to get lost for Indiana fans. It's bugged me constantly from a lot of people I respect in this industry coming after Indiana in that 24-hour period, that they didn't belong there, that it was, lip service to Indiana for them to be there in the first place, and they just had a nice resume that was hidden by not playing tough teams in the Big Ten. All that is true, but all the teams that you want, and we're not going to do that on this show today, but all the teams you want to lighten up to them of, hey, they should have been in there, like Bama or whatever, then don't have 3 losses, don't lose to Oklahoma, be better than that. But all the people that want to point to Indiana after that Notre Dame game and say they didn't belong there, I needed that same energy from those so-called experts after Saturday's games, and it never came. Nobody pointed out that called Indiana a fraud. Tennessee or I'm Clemson, but we discussed that off the air. Like, they did hang around that game. Those conversations didn't come after SMU in the same way it did Indiana.
Well,
and that bugs me a great deal, because this whole playoff should be about opportunity for teams that earn the right to get there. And for it only to be Indiana that was the scapegoat, I don't care how much trash talk Cignetti used this season, it's tasteless for the entirety of the sport to just look at Indiana and single them out and say that, oh, well, every other team didn't happen to get blown out in nearly the same fashion in these first-round games.
Look, Tennessee, Feinbaum goes on and shreds Indiana, fine. And he shreds SMU, fine. And he mocks Clemson, fine. And then he basically says, well, and I mean, Tennessee didn't play well. No, Tennessee got blown off the field. Tennessee had no business being there.
Yeah.
Now, they had business being there, but they didn't back it up.
Correct.
Tennessee got beat by Arkansas. Tennessee got beat handily by Georgia. Okay? And Tennessee went into Columbus against a team that had just, in their last performance on that field, the only fight they showed is when a team that isn't necessarily outstanding in any way, shape, or form, that, mind you, Indiana beat, went into Ohio State and beat Ohio State, and Ohio State couldn't move the football. And Tennessee went in there, and that game was over in the first 5 minutes. You could tell the first drive of that game, Tennessee wanted no part of that. Tennessee was lifeless, Tennessee was hapless, Tennessee was gutless, and Tennessee was clueless against Ohio State. And Ohio State might be the best team in the country when they're playing that way, don't get me wrong. And Ohio State has weapons galore. But you can't sit here and tell me that Indiana had no business being in there when the team that's carrying the flag for you for your argument went into Ohio State and got – listen, Tennessee, at least in the Indiana-Ohio State game, when Indiana went into Columbus, Indiana, for the first half of that game, looked competitive. Tennessee looked terrified. They had zero interest in being there. None. Tennessee, from the time they got to Ohio State, looked like they just assumed go back to, like, Ruby Falls. Like, they were like, where's Lookout Mountain? Let's get out of here. Tennessee had no interest in being there.
And to
they
be clear,
got absolutely humiliated.
To be clear, I don't have a problem with that happening. Like,
totally.
you look at the history of
Correct.
the CFP, and it's a 4-team playoff. Blowouts happen all the time.
Of course.
What I had an issue with was all this noise and anger got sent towards Indiana, and it didn't for Tennessee.
It's because they were the first one,
right.
and they were isolated.
But it also has to do with the fact, and if this is tinfoil hat territory, Eddie, then great. But I think it's actually like the reality of the situation. ESPN decided to carry water for the SEC because they're in a $1 billion deal with them. That's all that was. That's all Feinbaum defending Tennessee was.
Part of it is brand
because,
also, Jimmy. I will say part of it does become stereotype, and part of it does become what you're conditioned to believe. In other words, if you were sitting on a bus stop, okay, and every day that you're sitting on the bus stop, there's a yellow bus that passes, a blue bus that passes, and an orange bus that passes. But the orange bus, every other time it passes, skips the curb and crashes right at the end of the bench you're sitting on. Never happens with the other two colors, but orange it does. Eventually, when the orange bus is coming to you, you're probably going to get up off the bench, right?
Yeah.
Now, Alabama, for the last 2 decades, when Alabama has had those games, more often than not, Alabama has steamrolled people. And so for that reason, even though Alabama did not put themselves in position this year to earn the right to go and play against Notre Dame, the thought process, the stereotype, the branding, and the assumption from people is that Alabama in a game like that arrives. And when Alabama goes out and gets blown out at the end of the year at Oklahoma, who was not very good this year, that demerits Alabama and shows they shouldn't be in the college football playoff. But I do understand that people would say to themselves, yeah, but Alabama can flip a switch. Nick Saban's Alabama, that's correct. But Nick Saban was up there on the College Game Day set, which, by the way, mind you, where he said to Curt Cignetti, you know, of all the things you learned from me, you did not learn how to talk that kind of trash, okay?
Yeah.
That was Saban's very, like, diplomatic way of saying to Cignetti, yeah, man, like you probably should pump the brakes now. That's exactly what he was saying right there.
I do want to clarify one thing because I don't want to get it confused as to what my overall point is. I agree with you, the brand bias with Bama. I'm not talking as much about the Bama situation of them being left out. I'm talking about what you highlighted with Paul Feinbaum. He's willing to go after SMU. He's willing to torch Indiana. Kirk Herbstreit, who I have a great deal of respect for, is willing to torch Indiana. No one did it to Tennessee. And a lot of it from, regrettably, the four letters, it didn't arrive from ESPN because that is their package deal. They're not going to rip Tennessee to shreds because it undercuts the package that is being sold on a weekly basis. This is the best conference in college football, and Tennessee can do no wrong. That's why so much water carrying happened the last 48 hours for Tennessee compared to where it did Indiana. That's a separate conversation to, did Bama belong? Like, I agree with you on the brand there, and I'm not saying that Tennessee itself doesn't have a brand. My issue was every one of those games were one-sided affairs, and I get it. They were the only game in the Friday window, so that's the only game you can knee-jerk and talk about. But today and the rest of this week, if you're a local or national voice having a conversation about the college football playoff, you can't just come after Indiana and pretend
Correct.
like everybody else
Well,
that got
and here's
there
the other thing, Jimmy.
didn't have holes in their resume.
The other thing is this, and this is what people seem to forget. I don't hear. Let me tell you. I mean, I have occasionally this incredible clairvoyance, right? One of the biggest things that I said when they announced that they were going to go, and even before that, even when they announced they were going to go to a 12-team tournament, back when it was 4 teams, when they did away with the BCS and they did the college football playoff, and everybody's like, they need 8 teams. They need to. I kept saying, they can go to 16 teams, and people are going to complain till the cows come home about who the 17th was and how they're better than the 14th. That's just what happens. The NCAA tournament lets in, think about that. It lets in, what, 68 teams? 65 teams? What, I can't remember.
You're right.
68, right? Yeah, because you got the quote-unquote playing games. When that happens, what do? We complain about who was 69 and 70 and how they got a raw deal. And it's ridiculous
Indiana
that
State still got robbed.
Correct. It's ridiculous that 19-win NC State gets in and whatever else. That's what we do. That's what sports is. I don't know why the college football 12-team playoff is the one taking strays here over an imbalanced opening round of games when, guess what? The likelihood is in the NFL that the Buffalo Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs or the Detroit Lions are probably going to beat a wild card team. I'm not saying definitively they will, but they probably are. The likelihood is that one-seeded Boston Celtics in the East are probably going to escape by beating 8th-seeded Miami. And the 1 seed in the West is going to escape by beating, Oklahoma City is the 1 seed, is probably going to get out of their first round in 4 or 5 games against Sacramento. That's why you have seeding, and that's why it's the playoffs. And so for people to say, like, this system's a joke. Why is it a joke? Because the 4 teams that are favored higher won. Okay, that means they were seeded properly, right?
Yeah.
I did think that SMU was going to go in and make some noise at Penn State. And
I did too.
Instantly, I'm like, oh, boy.
The only issue I have with the format itself is that the automatic bye to the conference winners, like, you've got Oregon who has to face Ohio State.
No, for sure. The imbalance of the bracket seems a little odd.
Yes.
And I think they will change that. They've indicated there's going to be
Don't you
modifications.
think Penn State? Now, Boise State, do we know as much about Boise State? Boise State, this might be Oklahoma Statue of Liberty, Boise State.
I'm still not in on
I
James Franklin. Like, maybe I'm going to sit here and say that until he hoists a trophy or wins, the high-level game. That was a good win, don't be wrong.
Think about
but, like,
this.
I took Boise State in the 11 already. They're getting 11 points. I scooped that up on Saturday.
Arizona State's the other one that I'd like to see Arizona State just win the whole thing. I'm all in on Sparky. Let's go. Like all these people, let's just see Arizona State win the whole thing.
Their running back is fun. Scataboo.
Yeah, he's a good player, right?
Yes.
Let's just see, if Arizona State wins the whole thing, then it's like, you know what? That's why it's the way it is, right? Does anybody know anything about Arizona State other than they flipped on the Saturday the championship games? And they're like, to see a different game, and they're like, wait a minute, Arizona State's up like 56 on Iowa State.
The school where Jaden Daniels started his college career.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm.
Listen,
with Herm Edwards.
I always liked Arizona State when I was a kid just because it seemed like this party school with smoking hot chicks. That's what I knew about Arizona State. And then I went to Tempe, and I'm like, wait a minute, like it's like this big, huge, like basically urban campus. I just assumed it was like this place where it was nothing but a bunch of Jen Sturgers, who I know was Florida State, like running around, right? Jake Plummer went there. I know that. Pat Tillman went there. I know that. James Harden went there. I know that. Reggie Jackson went there. I know that. But I'm all in on Arizona State. I don't know anything about them. Other than they have cool helmets. I like Sparky. And one time, because I like Sparky and I was wearing a Sparky T-shirt, I had an 82-pound liver spot at a gas station come up, point to me, and say that I needed to find Christ. And I'm like, it's actually a college football mascot. I'm not really wearing the shirt of the devil, just so you know. Like, I'm not a Satanist, right? I mean, I like Sparky. I think he's cool. He carries a little pitchfork. He's fun.
Went 3-9 last year with their 3 wins were Southern Utah, Washington State, and UCLA.
Here's the thing. They
were
need
projected to be one of the worst teams in the
And their helmets just have the pitchfork on them, right?
Yes.
They got to
Big
go
12.
Sparky. They got to go full Sparky. If they get Sparky on the helmets, then
It's a
let's
trident,
go.
isn't it?
What's that?
It's a trident, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
But I'm telling you, I need Sparky. He's cool. Colts won yesterday. We'll talk next. Okay, Jimmy, yay or nay on this one?
Oh, absolutely, yay. Come on now. I already told this story earlier in the holiday season, but there's like this talk
Way to
radio
step all
station
over it,
in.
Jimmy.
Well, considering you're always super OCD about playing any music past 5 seconds throughout the entirety of the year, you'll have to forgive me to realize that you were doing a bit in that regard. My apologies. Anyway, I told this story already once during the holiday season, but there's a radio station, I think it's in New Zealand or where specifically, but they had a game throughout the entirety of the holiday season where if anybody said the word Christmas, they played All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey. And so listeners sometime derail the show and call in and tell a story and then sneak the word Christmas in there somewhere. And
What year? By the way, did you ever watch You Can't Do That on television?
I
Probably
know
before
of
your
it,
guys' time.
but I did not.
It used to drive me crazy because on You Can't Do That on television, anytime somebody said the word, I can't remember what, I think it was I don't know, if they would say that, they got slimed. Like
Sure.
a bucket of slime. But anytime you said, I can't remember if it was wet or water would dump on you. And I would get so mad because when somebody gets slimed, I'm like, just say the word for the water and it'll rinse you off.
Really
what are
quickly
these people
follow
doing?
it up with the water. That's funny.
You know what I mean? Made me so mad. Okay, yesterday, Colts win 38-30 over the Tennessee Titans in a game where the score was probably closer than it needed to be in terms of when you look back at the final score. The Colts yesterday had a phenomenal performance from Jonathan Taylor. A record, essentially. I mean, a once a season. I mean, for Jonathan Taylor, you wouldn't say once in a career, but clearly a fantastic performance from him. However, Anthony Richardson, while he was great on the ground, completed 7 of 11 passes. And I was thinking about this yesterday after the game, and I'm thinking, okay, you had a defense that, Womack had a pick, Kenny Moore had a pick. You're going against Mason Rudolph, which there's a reason why at the beginning of the year he was starting behind a guy that had a mayonnaise cologne. And you're going against a team in Tennessee that is completely hapless and has no direction. The only direction they have right now is to the airport because half the team is already psychologically and emotionally in the Bahamas. And you get like I said, essentially a record-setting day from Jonathan Taylor to have 2 rushes for touchdowns over 60 yards like he did and to go over 200 yards and to average what he did and to have a quarterback that added to that in a dynamic 1-2 on-the-ground punch. And with all of that, you still late in the game have it momentarily in question, which makes you wonder where exactly they are. How good are they really? How competitive are they really? They are more competitive than Tennessee. They are more competitive than the New York Giants, and they're more competitive than the Jacksonville Jaguars, which sets them up for the danger of a 9-8, look how close we were a year, let's run it all back. And I don't think people want that. I really don't. I think people are I think there are a lot of people that would rather the Colts not make the playoffs and force them into taking a deep, hard look at things instead of this fool's gold of thinking that they're right on the cusp. They're not. And the problem with yesterday is they got a win, and this year has always been about the development of Anthony Richardson. Almost their words more than mine. But this year has been about the development of Anthony Richardson, and yesterday, while yes, it was a win, actually might be impeding that because you're becoming too reliant on his legs and not forcing him out of his comfort zone of throwing the football. If Anthony Richardson is going to be your long-term answer at quarterback, at some point you have to take off the training wheels, and each time he started to show stride, they then reel him in and say, well, we're only going to throw 11 pass plays. And yes, he had, again, the inconsistency, and he had some good balls as well. But you've got to, at some point, Jimmy, start saying, we're just going to go and roll with it here, right?
Yeah, these are bad teams to close the season. Like, their schedule is the easiest in football, or one of the easiest in football. We knew that. That's why we emphasized how important it was to go and get a win against the Broncos to make these games have some type of meaning about them. And I wish they were out of the playoffs. I wish this wasn't a conversation, and here's why. Because I've told you this all year in terms of how the season was going to end. You wanted Anthony Richardson's development because they weren't going to do anything this year. The rest of the AFC, at least the teams that are there in the top of the conversation, the Ravens, the Bills, the Chiefs, they're all better than you. I get it. We live in an any given Sunday type of society still. They're all better than you. Like, I'll take them every single situation. I will take all three of those teams in a playoff setting against the Colts. And the reason I wish that the playoff charade, whatever you want to call it, was over is because they are handcuffing themselves to, well, we're going to run the ball 30 times with Jonathan Taylor because the Titans can't stop the run, and this is our path to win, so that's what we're going to do. What I would rather them do, and I don't care how he looks, I don't care how bad it gets, I want a full-on Shane Steichen being the play caller he's supposed to be, pass-happy offense for Anthony Richardson the final 2 games of the season. You are not playing the Chiefs, you're not playing the Bills, you're not playing the Lions, you are playing the Giants and the Jaguars to close the year. Turn him loose and just see what you have to build on going into 2025, because if you don't, if you take the approach of you're going to hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor 25, 30 times a game, and you're going to let Richardson do it with his legs, and he's going to throw 15 passes, you are squarely back to page 1 next season, where what are you going to do the first 5 weeks, Jake? Are you going to baby him? Are you going to still just hand the ball off and, okay,
Yeah.
we'll let him throw it?
Like I said, Tim Tebow started 16 games and completed 47% of his passes, and so every team in the league basically said, yeah, we've seen enough. If his completion percentage does not increase, at some point they're going to have to say, but his athleticism and his ability, he is a good enough athlete and he moves the ball well enough with his feet that you feel like you don't want to completely dispatch him, right?
If you're too scared to throw the football with him against the Titans, the Giants, and the Jaguars, he's not it. I'm sorry, he's not the guy.
That's fair.
Like if you're too worried about it, losing games because you're going to trust him to be a quarterback, he's not the guy.
Was Steichen scared to throw yesterday, or was Steichen coaching to win? Because the question I have recently is Steichen coaching this team to win games or develop his quarterback? Right now, it's to win games.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But if winning games means avoiding your quarterback, then that's not a good formula for your quarterback.
It's a problem.
Would you rather have him get hurt trying to throw in one of these next 2 games, or get him through the entire season? Okay, he misses 2 games.
No,
now he's played 15 games in his season. Now he can go into next year understanding
But
what
your best
these
chance
teams
of
provide.
winning is to back things away from your quarterback. That is not a
we
good
also
long-term
can't
recipe.
say that he's and Eddie, I agree with most of your points there, except for the one about getting him hurt throwing the football. They're still running him with abandon, like the reckless abandon borderline. Like that can't be your protection for him not throwing the football is, oh, he might get hurt, when you're still running him like a bowling ball throughout the course of a game. Like that can't be the protection for them. I understand Shane Steichen's dilemma, because you still have a locker room that, like just our conversation with Kenny Moore today, they clearly want to still be involved in the playoff picture, and they want to get there. They could have done themselves a massive service by, winning another game or 2, but I get not wanting to fully abandon ship when there's still life. Regrettably, you have 2 weeks left. Your life might still be alive week 18, and now you're stuck between playing to win, which you should be able to do with your quarterback anyway, but playing to win or protecting yourself from a quarterback that you don't fully trust against bottom half of the league defenses.
Let me tell you what every guy has. Every guy at some point, you guys might not have reached this point in your life yet. It might be more applicable to say sweatshirt for you guys. But every guy has somewhere a box, an empty box, like in the basement or in the garage. And it's like, what are you doing with this box? Why is this box in the garage? Don't throw that away. That's a really good box. Well, it's just sitting here. It's not doing anything. Someday I'm going to need that. And when I do, I'm going to be so happy that I have that box, because it's durable. Well, that's what our microwave came in. No, I know, but I'm telling you, like that. We're gonna move, or I'm gonna need it, or I'm gonna have a gift and that is a really good box. Do not throw that box out. Okay, but we're not using it properly right now because it's just sitting here. I know, but someday when we need it, we're gonna have to use it, and that's where the Colts may be with Anthony Richardson, because it's like, but you're not using him the right way. You're not doing anything. I understand. Like, if they decide to move on from him at quarterback, then the question becomes, do they hold on to him in some way just because he is so unique that at some point they know there's going to be a situation where he could help them? But it's not right now. And then it becomes just kind of an awkward area. Do you have, by the way, plays of the day?
I do have a couple for you.
We have games for you to do them with?
We do have
I
a
guess you
couple
could do
today, but also
we
some
have
Christmas
holiday
Day games.
version.
Yep, exactly.
How
Yep.
about that? All right, we'll get that from Jimmy next.
Of the day mixed in as well with some holiday action. But we'll start first with games taking place today. Packers Saints tonight, Monday Night Football in Green Bay. We'll take under 28.5 total pass attempts for Jordan Love. This number's gone under the last 5 straight games. Expect this to be a blowout, a lot of handoffs, a lot of hitting off to Josh Jacobs for Green Bay. So I think
New
under
Orleans
28.5
has no chance in this
is
game,
the play.
correct?
Yeah, they're 14-point dogs. I think Green Bay probably rolls them, but it's the NFL. Those big numbers are weird. So I'm going to stay away from that. Instead, go with a prop under 28.5 passing attempts for Jordan Love. Also tonight, Pacers on the road against the Golden State Warriors. Second night of a back-to-back.
Second Baba.
Indeed.
Nobody
We'll
says
scoop
that.
the 6. Pacers getting 6 on the road tonight against Golden State. We will scoop the 6 there. Plenty of NBA action on Christmas Day, Wednesday. We'll take 3 of the games for you. Give me the Dallas Mavericks to win on the money line over the Minnesota Timberwolves. Also lay the 9. The Boston Celtics favored by 9 points against the Philadelphia 76ers. Lakers getting 4.5 on the road against Golden State. We'll scoop the 4.5 there. Last play for you, the Pop-Tarts Bowl on Saturday. Iowa State against Miami. I'll scoop the 3.5 for the Cyclones against the Hurricanes. Eddie, any place for you?
Yes, tonight I will take Jordan Love to not throw an interception. Don't think he's going to be pressing a
Ooh.
ton.
All right.
There'll be a lot of easy throws for Mr. Love tonight against New Orleans.
Any NBA early action for you
No,
with the
sir.
Christmas Day slate?
No, sir. No, sir. No,
All
sir.
right.
By
Those
the
are
way,
your plays of the day, shockingly unsponsored.
Iowa State, I think in their last couple of their last bowl games now have been in the Pop-Tarts Bowl and the Cheez-Its Bowl. So next
They're
they should
collecting
be in
snacks.
they should be in the Snoop Dogg Bowl, right? Because it seems
Yeah.
to go well with those other two. JMV has entered the studio.
Cheese It.
What were the other
Bowl.
cheese?
What'd I say?
Cheese Its.
Is it?
I don't
It's
know.
Cheese It. It's not plural.
That's what he said.
There's a Cheese Its with an S. I had to make sure he's correct over there.
What am I
Corbin
supposed
in the building?
What? What was the? There was a Sunshine brand that had what they called cheese something because it was like
Cheese Nips was the
Cheese
other one.
Nips.
nips. Yeah.
I like nips.
Oh yeah.
Cheese nips.
But,
they don't make those anymore, do they?
Phoebe Cates could have
Sunshine?
been there. One of their
I regret
cheese
I
poster
regret my
children,
answer.
right?
I will always go with the cheese nips.
over the cheese zits, right?
Zits.
John, what's lined up on the big program today?
We're going to go out to Golden State to San Francisco. This is more like it with the Pacers. We're going to go Stephen Holder with the odds on this team getting into the postseason and what we witnessed yesterday, and all this being again. Glad they won, but
Did you miss me
A
up there
lot of
yesterday
fluff.
in the press box?
oh yeah, it was fantastic up there.
Kind of like a mausoleum.
Yeah, it's got reminiscent of the stands.
I was gonna say.
We
so,
just didn't have a white shirt covering up all the empty chairs. Yeah,
Was it? How was honestly? How was the crowd yesterday?
it was terrible. I thought it was terrible.
I mean,
And it's a good thing they did the whole whiteout thing because it looked like that people were actually in the chairs their seats when they weren't. So I would assume that Jacksonville game, if they're out of it, it's probably going to be some other out too. So probably should be because then you'll see a lot of blue seats.
no, they're not going to be. They're going to win out, right, and go 9-8.
Oh yeah,
and
they're
then-
going to go 9-8,
and then
yeah.
they'll run it back, right?
Yeah, there's no question about it. Yep.
What'd you think of Indiana Notre Dame? You going to get into that?
I was disappointed in the way that IU went at it. Way too conservative. Incredibly disappointed. It's not enough for me to be disappointed in the season overall, and I just love what it's led to now. The infighting at ESPN. You know what? If Shannon Sharp and Kirk Herbstreit, just fight. If Shannon Sharp wants to fight Herbstreit, just fight.
Who
All
would
right?
win that
Stop
fight?
being a big wuss about it and go fight.
Now, Feinbaum was all upset too, right?
Mr. Peanut's always upset about something.
And then he was upset, and yet he seemed to ignore the fact that Tennessee got absolutely boat
Oh
raced.
yeah, we just ignore that. I
mean,
mean,
Tennessee,
they got flat
like-
busted.
Tennessee got beat
Yeah.
the worst of the SMU probably, right? Kind of a draw.
I just want to see IU go at it. I mean, it was almost like that they were happy to be there, the way that they went about that game, especially Kurt Signetti. It was
Well-
weird. I didn't so much care about him going on TV 5 seconds
It's not what he
before they
went on;
out
it's what
there,
he
but-
said. I mean,
Yeah.
Well,
I
it's
mean,
the actions afterwards
yeah.
too. The 2 punts
But
in the second half.
that's been his role this year, and that's worked out quite well.
totally.
But
It got him to that point, but
we knew when they got served a little bit of their comeuppance. that
you
he
got
was
to
gonna
know when
take
to
it.
hold him and know when to fold him.
And
a
here's the
little
other
bit.
thing too: if that's where you want to be as a program, and hopefully they'll be back. Hell, I don't know if they'll ever be selected back again. Who knows if they'll ever be like that? But that's the type of crap you're going to get. I mean,
Oh,
you're going
yeah.
to get bombarded with people, saying stuff about you, and it's much better being that than it is being a doormat or an afterthought, as this program has been for so many decades.
If I gave you I mean, undoubtedly the national title is going to get won by a Big Ten or Notre Dame, right?
Yeah, I'd think, right?
I'm all in on Arizona State, John. I don't know anything about them. They may be terrible. I just like that Arizona State's the one that nobody talks about.
I know it's who they're playing, but I still like Texas as well as a team to potentially win it all.
Texas is pretty good.
Still like that offense.
That offense is pretty darn good, right?
See Arch Manning one of these days.
Arch Manning, like they put him in. If it's 4th and goal from the 1, they put Arch Manning in.
Yeah.
Right? And then, is Quinn Ewers going to be at Oregon next year and Arch Manning then is going to be at the starter at Texas, or is Arch Manning going to get $7 million to go to Ole Miss? And
I just wish I didn't want to see Riley Leonard look better than Curtis Rourke, and Riley Leonard looked.
I didn't have that on the bingo card, John, on Friday. I thought for certain Rourke would win that battle.
Yeah, and especially early with that tip ball and the interception.
How about running off a 97-yard touchdown run and then having 91 yards at the half?
Yeah, exactly. It just, I don't know. I just wanted to see how you go at it. The whole fair catching thing, and that got tired. It just was really anti what they had been the entire year. They still probably would have taken a beating, right? Because that's just how outclassed they looked.
I mean,
I wanted to see them not leave anything out there. I thought they did.
It's what Texas, Texas, for example, what did I read? That Texas has something, so many millions of dollars just on their offensive line alone. I mean, when you get down into the trenches and you're going against, and I don't buy into recruiting stuff a lot, but you have 5 stars all the way across the board in the trenches. In Indiana's going out there basically with, at many positions.
It was how Notre Dame looked a lot of those
guys,
years in the Brian Kelly era against top-tier SEC teams. To your point, Jake, they just got out-muscled, and you're looking at a revolving door of 5 stars.
And they're
4
always
stars.
going to have, offensive and defensive linemen that are better than everybody else because it's Notre Dame, right? That's the way it's going to be, especially now.
John's got on his ELO shirt.
Don't bring me down.
That's right.
You got Little Kings on over there, the cream ale.
I do,
That's
baby.
nice right there.
All set for the holidays. We are off, obviously, for tomorrow and Christmas Day as well. We will be back with you on Thursday, so too will John. But since this is the last time we will talk to you, I hope that everybody has a satisfying, a very safe, and a very joyous holiday next couple of days, and a very, very Merry Christmas to all. We will talk to you on Thursday. John is up next. Thank you for listening to Query & Company.